let's get on with things.
Yes. Firstly, though, I have to apologise. I had planned to do a theme tune, and I want to let you into the world. So I was like, okay, if who was it now? There was someone, David Guetta, I think,
David Guetta,
had
yeah,
done an Eminem
yeah.
thing, hadn't he? So I was like, I can do that. I can use Chat GPT. I can use that. What is it? Duck AI that he's using. I'm going to do. Jay-Z is going to do us a theme tune, and it's going to be awesome. And I think I tried, and I did type in, intro theme or theme tune about the Spen and Beck show in the style of both Jay-Z and I think I had Snoop. And also, I wanted to see what Beyonce would say about us. So I've got
Yeah.
some really nice lyrics, and I put them through this thing. And oh man, alive! There's a reason why David Guetta only used 3 words. I think it was by Eminem because it really doesn't go well. They make it all
Ah,
seem so easy using this AI. It isn't. It
it's not
really
quite
isn't.
there. No, good
It
for
really isn't.
lyrics.
Great for
Okay,
lyrics.
okay. Yeah.
And maybe just making with Spen and Becks, but certainly the 4 verses they would have been extended, like which we could have released like a Christmas treat or something. Yeah, not great. So my other
Not
half
quite
walked
there
past me,
yet.
was like, "What on earth are you listening to?" And it's just like this weird robot that occasionally sounds like Jay-Z. So yeah, we're still trying on the theme tune front.
We'll get there. We'll get there. I think, focus on making 100 episodes and
Okay.
then you can add nice things. Just 100 episodes.
We might be able to pay for Jay-Z at that point.
Oh,
Like,
of course. I mean, who could we afford right now?
I hear the Chuckle Brothers. Are they both still alive?
Chuckle
No, I
Brothers
think
or the
only one of them
Proclaimers. They're the
is.
same. No, they're not the same.
No, they're not. They're really not. No. I hear, what was his name? The guy was it Bob Carroll G's lives pretty close to here, the one who had Spit the Dog. I'm thinking like 80s Z-listers who have now like been reabsorbed into the community. That might be what we can afford. Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, if anyone wants to hear that, obviously just let us know in the comments. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can either have the lyrics that Beyonce would sing or Jay-Z.
But in the voice of the Chuckle Brothers. Amazing.
Exactly.
There
It's
we
a
go.
mashup I want to hear.
I mean, it's an idea. In order to test that idea, we need to test it to validate it, right?
Okay, I think it's good. Yeah, I agree.
Let's test it. Let's do a design sprint.
Yes. The problem at hand is Spen and Bex need a theme tune. What is the potential solution? But yes, no, today, to getting on topic, we're going to talk about design sprints and why they can fail. Both of us are practitioners in this, workshop facilitators. Yeah, we've had quite a few rodeos, and we've seen where they go wrong. So I thought it'd be really good to cover that off and hopefully, get some people, help you avoid the pitfalls and make them really work for you.
Yeah, and maybe first, just before we get really negative about these things, maybe talk about some of the positive things because, like, we are practitioners. I'd say, practitioners, but also massive advocates. I think when done well, and when you've got a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, when you get those things right rather than wrong, then a design sprint is an incredible way to de-risk and validate ideas in a super quick time. And yeah, like the book that Jake Knapp wrote with John Zaretsky, it's all about kind of what is the subtext of that book?
How to solve business problems in 5 days, I think.
You're good. How to solve big problems and test new ideas in just 5 days.
Close.
Yeah, and it does that, and you go through the process, and it's really good. But there are a lot of pitfalls,
Yeah.
and you, I think, have seen a few of these.
Yes.
Oh, you going to talk about the conversation you had with a dude or not? That's what I was just about to say, and then I paused.
I'm not going to give away my my
No.
sources, but I've seen. Yes, I think what I want to talk about today is what preparation you need to do both before the sprint and actually how you're going to change your culture post the sprint to make sure these things really land. And I had a really insightful conversation recently with someone who shall not be named about what happened post a really successful sprint where we all bounced out of it and we were like, shoot for the moon, this is going to be awesome. And, a year on, then no further on. And that's a real shame. And it's kind of like, what went wrong? Yes, and I think there's some things to consider. And with the best will in the world, if you don't have the culture right in your organisation to support the concept of the sprint and the way they should be run and those kind of like fundamentals, if those don't come to fruition in your company, you're on a highway to nothing.
Yeah, in fact, I was talking to, I'm going to name drop here. I was talking to a guy called C. Todd Lombardo, and actually, I'm doing a podcast with him. I'm doing an interview with him, and it's going to come out in some form. I'm not sure exactly what form it's going to be yet, but I'm interviewing him. He wrote a book, again, another one on my shelf.
See, it's almost like this like weird Mary Poppins bag where you just kind of like everything's there.
There's another one. He wrote this book.
Okay.
Which is called Design Sprint. There's an interesting story about how this emerged in comparison to the Google Ventures Sprint book.
Yep.
Because actually it was basically launched at pretty much the same time.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
C. Todd Lombardo also wrote a book called Roadmaps, Reimagining Roadmaps.
Right.
And basically that book was as a direct result of the thing that you just talked about, which is basically people go through this kind of workshopping experience, whether that be a design sprint or something else. They have this enormous high at the top, and like just at the end, everyone's great. Like, look at all the work we've done. This feels great. We're brilliant. We're the best people in the world. And then boom, like everything just drops and nothing gets done about it. And so he wrote that book, that second book, as a result of seeing this happening over and over again. So soon there might be something else, and I'll maybe link to that. No, I won't. I'm not going to link to it. That's going to be never going to come back to this. To find out more about it. But I think, we've both experienced it, and there's a load of ways that I think you can support organizations and get things right. So let's start. Let's go with some top tips.
Definitely. And I think let's start with the beginning. I think the preparation before the sprint. What would be your top tips?
So there's lots. So I actually think that there's a lot of times where a design sprint is not even the right thing to be using.
Yeah.
The focus for Jake Knapp with the book was all about, because he was working with Google Ventures, working specifically with startups, very early stage, entrepreneurial thinkers, kind of founders and small teams that probably have some mindset towards experimentation already. And so the implementation of these things actually works much more easily than it does perhaps in a bigger organization. So that's one thing, is kind of like knowing where you are on the culture of innovation and creative thinking and problem solving and experimentation. Kind of knowing where you're at internally as an organization is going to enable you to know how much work you need to do after the sprint to kind of embed some of these practices. So really kind of understanding what your culture of innovation or culture for innovation, appetite for it is super important. But some projects just shouldn't be design sprints. Things that are, for example, not well enough defined. If it's a big kind of challenge and there's a million different ways that you can go, and you're not even sure whether it's a communications challenge, a strategy challenge, a learning and development challenge, a product challenge, those are things that are not great for design sprints. You need something which is much more specific. And although you go through a process on the design sprint to get very specific, if it's too big, it's never going to work, because you're never going to get aligned, and you can't do that kind of work that quickly during a design sprint.
Yeah.
Now, if that's the case, I would always recommend doing something else before a design sprint. A strategy workshops, product strategy stuff. Think about all the things that you need to do, and then figure out what the biggest challenge is right now before going into a design sprint.
Yep.
So that's one thing. How about we go tag team? How about your go now?
I think that designing stuff from scratch and designing lots of things. So I've been in design sprints with incredibly capable and awesome facilitators and we've looked at designing entire apps or really big chunks of them. And actually, you have to be, to excuse my French, shit hot at what you're doing if you want to lead a team through that. Pick something small that's known as a problem. So the example they use in the book is like, it's a coffee e-commerce site, and you want to get people to try new flavors. How can you try and encourage that behavior? It's a really specific section, so really specific behavior that you want to try and facilitate. And when you're testing, you might go, okay, well, normally only X amount of people will test new coffees. By doing this thing, we've changed that. It's been the right thing to do, etc. So I think really focusing in on something and getting everyone aligned beforehand, getting that data about the thing in question. So if it's a case of you want to, I don't know, look at some part of your sales funnel, for example, and there's a massive issue there in conversion. Well, what do the stats look like? What does, how much traffic is going through it? Who's bouncing? Who's coming out of the sales process? Whatever it may be. Get insights as well. So there's a section on Ask the Experts, and in the new sort of like shortened abridged design sprint that AJ and Smart are doing at the moment, you don't even necessarily have the people in the room. You have specialists and you have a round table conversation. Well, make sure those people are equipped with the right information. They've done their research beforehand. They've had conversations with customers. They've got up-to-date data from maybe the customer service team, people who are experiencing the problems, colleagues, whatever. Be as equipped as possible. I did one design sprint where we actually had a data team in another room, and anytime anything came up that we didn't have a preparation, we'd just be like, right, we've got a request for this, and within X amount of time it would be back. Stanley making a break for it. I can see the tree trembling in the background.
All sorts of things going on back here.
Oh, the golden puppy is now... He's shown himself up, isn't he?
I'm just going to let it go. It's fine. Do what you want. I don't care anymore. Just do what you want.
Oh, you've come through the honeymoon period and out the other end, haven't you?
Oh, goodness.
So yeah,
Yes.
be prepared. Have the conversations in advance of, it might be a case of like, survey a lot of people's opinions and get vox pops or something where essentially you can inject that data in a really easy to consume format to the people who are participating in the sprint, so they get an understanding of what the problem is. It's not just from their perspective, they get that understanding. Doing your homework beforehand and doing that preparation is really important, and making sure the right people in the room as well. So don't discount, as we've mentioned beforehand, just because of job roles. Actually, it's having the right types of thinkers in the room rather than their roles.
Yeah. Actually, I've started to now do like a much more research before a design sprint. So I really go deep onto the jobs to be done research and bring that into a design sprint before kind of day one of a design sprint. I do a big body of research with customers, with internal staff as well, to understand everyone's viewpoints. And to your point of trying to figure out something small, what a lot of people do is they misunderstand the purpose of a design sprint quite often.
Yeah.
And they think a design sprint is a sprint in order to design a full product. It's like a quick way to design a product, and they're trying to go, well, we don't want to take 6 months over this. Oh, look, there's a thing called a design sprint. Surely that's just a faster way to get to a finished design that I can then throw over a wall to a developer. And of course, that's not what it's about. It's about learning. It is entirely about learning what works, learning what wows, learning what doesn't work. And figuring out along the way where the changes need to happen. So sometimes, people want a whole app creating, and what you end up saying is, like, there's no point in doing all of that other stuff. All you need to do is figure out the onboarding journey so that people don't drop off your thing. And actually, let's just prototype a new onboarding journey. Forget everything else. What's the screen what's the stage of that process that makes people go, okay, I get it. I know why this is it works for me now.
Yep.
And just as an example, very early days of Facebook, very, very early days of Facebook, they figured out that when people get to 10 friends, they go, oh shit, yeah, I get it. I got 10, like,
Worthwhile.
that's it. And that's the wow magic moment, you know?
Yep.
So getting to that magic moment through a prototype is the thing you need to do. So figuring out that kind of, that job to be done, you know,
Yeah.
job to be done of Facebook back in the day, not now, was like connect me better with friends, right?
Well, how could you get someone to those 10 friendships or 10 connections ASAP?
Exactly
So there
right.
were emails flying around. There was all sorts of things. There was notifications. There was like, have you thought about this? Do you remember
Yep.
this person? You
Yep.
know, anything that would prompt someone to that engagement point where it became beneficial. And you're like, right, there's actually some content on my newsfeed rather than it being, you know, like
An
there's
empty,
nothing
an
going
empty
on.
room.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
definitely.
So yeah, big research. Don't underplay it, and it's very easy to look at, you know, the books and the recipes that people like AJ and Smart kind of publish, and a load of other people as well, and just go, that's the design sprint. It's 3 or 4 workshops or whatever, and it's a day of prototyping, it's a day of testing, and that's all you need to do. But actually, as you've said, I think I consider a design sprint to be more like a month's worth of work.
Okay.
There's 1 or 2 weeks of research beforehand. There's a week of like intensive workshopping and prototyping and testing. And then there's a week of like, shit, what are we going to do now? What happens here? And how do you implement this? Or how do you make those difficult decisions to go, actually, we've tried this thing, but it's not proving out. And how do you, you know, make that a tough decision? Because it's a learning process. And a design sprint sometimes should be thought of as like, in a week or a couple of weeks worth of work, I'm going to get to where I would have got in 6 months' time.
Exactly.
Or or the other way of looking at it is going, I'm going to create an insurance policy as a design sprint that says, I'm going to test whether this thing works instead of wasting 100 grand, or instead of wasting all of that 6 month time,
Yep.
all of those people's like, and so it's got to be seen as that way. And the prototype at the end of it, I think, should be seen as a throwaway thing.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
And that is very contentious in the world of design sprints, I think. And because people want that artifact, they want that beautiful, beautiful aesthetic. They want everything to be animations in the prototypes and colors and, you know, all that beautifying.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people are kind of expecting at the end of a design sprint. But actually, it doesn't always give you the actual outcomes of
Yes.
knowing whether this thing is good or bad.
Yeah, and we've had this conversation before, haven't we? Because I'm a lean practitioner, therefore they're going to get the absolute, you know, the least that they need to do that. So I'll be honest, that's not a problem I face because I ramble on about it so much in the preparation. But I think there's a really important thing as well is, you know, even through the process where you vote, you collaborate, you iterate, etc. The first chosen prototype is not necessarily the thing that's going to be the right thing. It's the thing that you've chosen to proceed with first. Out of the list of potential ideas, you think that is the best foot to put forward. But it might be wrong, and that's fine because it's all about the learning. And you can either go to, you know, your backlog of other ideas, or you can scrap it all, take that learning, and, you know, people have, you know, iteration sprints, and what you got that feedback. So it might be a case of actually you can just iterate the prototype you've got ever so slightly and get to where you need to be, or it's a case of that learning is telling you that thing is totally wrong. Right? Okay, bearing in mind this data we didn't have, let's go through that ideation phase again and get to testing something else. And again, you're closer to it. The goal is being closer to the solution. Always being closer, you know, and it doesn't matter if you're right or not, but what have you learned? And I think that's the thing, is that's the point of difference, isn't it? Rather than the fact that I've designed a thing and that's the thing we're just going to use. So that's really important. In terms of being within the sprint, then, what would you say are major watch outs?
So big watch out to start with is make sure you've got a decider. A, make sure you've got a decider. B, make sure that decider has authority and accountability. And if there's someone, if you have a decider that has to then get it checked off outside of the design sprint, or if you have a situation where a decider is actually going to swoop in and kind of make and change all the decisions that have happened. Like, that's the worst possible thing that you could do.
Exactly.
It's so demoralizing. I've seen it firsthand. It's absolutely awful for the team. And it just means that you end up going in circles and wasting everybody's time. And it's just a really bad thing. So make sure you've got a decider that is. So a decider role for me comes down to a few things. Firstly, they need to have the authority. They need to be accountable. So actually, like, invested in this.
Yep.
Afterwards, they're going to be the person that takes it on. They're going to be like making all of the key decisions afterwards. But you also need to have a decider who can articulate their decisions, because a design sprint is a collaborative process. But sometimes the decider's call, their decision, might go against the kind of democratic view of the rest of the group.
Yep.
And that's okay, right? It's not supposed to be a democracy. It's supposed to be everyone is there really to help the decider make the right decision, the best decision, the decision based on the meritocracy of the ideas rather than the hierarchical chain within the organization, which is completely different to the way that certainly most corporates make their decisions, right?
Because often they haven't had the voice of their colleagues, and people haven't had that opportunity to have a seat at the table, like you say, and try and influence and give their opinion. It's normally just a case of someone making decisions in isolation.
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure you got a decider, make sure they have the authority, make sure they're accountable for it, make sure they're going to be delivering it afterwards, make sure they're able to articulate their thoughts and communicate to people so that they can bring people along on their journey so everyone else feels empowered and valued. These are things that really make or break within a design sprint, genuinely.
Definitely. Just to add to that, I think if you have somebody who is, say on the C team and they can't be involved in it, but they are the project sponsor, for example, then it may be a case of actually up to that definition point where you realize what you're zooming in on and everyone's in agreement that that is the area of focus. You can have them leave and have someone step up and become the decider. But there has to be the explicit agreement that when they come back in the room, they honour all the decisions that have been made from that point.
Yeah.
That is a person who is, you trust and you get their opinion and you're happy to support them because you've given them your permission to make those decisions and they have to stand by them. So that's if they can't.
And coming back to, the challenge after a design sprint. So, culturally, if that's something which is very different to the way that normal things happen, then there's some questions that you need to be asking yourself about whether or not this is the right thing right now. Yeah. And some people, weirdly, and I've seen this like a lot, I'm going to use some jobs to be done terminology, but a lot of people kind of hire a design sprint, not to improve a product, but they hire a design sprint to change the culture of a team. Right. And they kind of think we need to be more agile. We need to be more innovative. We need to apply design thinking. Let's do a design sprint around this problem that we've got with this product. And I was going to say that's like the wrong thing to do. But actually, if everyone knows it, everyone knows that that's the reason to do a design sprint, then that's actually okay. I think that's all right. I think by doing it that way, you're actually learning by doing. It's much better if you're
not a sticky plaster. I must say, I've had another reason we're going to hire a design sprint to inject a bit of energy into our organisation and a project because it's stagnant and stopping. And, I can be as wee as you like and, try and bring that energy. But if the people there aren't up for it, it ain't going to work. So,
no.
Yeah, they have to be aligned with it.
Yeah. So exactly right. And so a one-off thing is never going to change any culture, but exactly. A one-off thing to show what what is possible from using these new ways of working, these new approaches, can be a really great thing. If again, there's an execution plan, there's a way that you're going to be able to empower people to do this further down the line. Whether maybe you're going to be look to train internal people in facilitation so that they can then run design sprints themselves once they've seen kind of someone externally doing it. So definitely. There are reasons why doing a design sprint as a way to try and change culture, as a starting point for changing culture, that can sometimes work. But you've got to acknowledge it. You've got to call it out. Yep. And so I think really understanding what it is that you're looking for in terms of the outcomes of a design sprint. Don't think about outputs, because outputs means the prototype. We want what change are we looking for? What learning are we looking for? What validation are we looking for as well? Yeah, really important things.
Yep, completely agree. I'm trying to think what else. I had a point that connected to that. I'm just thinking, I'm like, where did that go? Come back, thoughts. Oh, yes. If you want to trial them, do yourself a favour. Either start really small and do it behind closed doors with a team that you trust and feel comfortable with, rather than it be a case of like, oh, to the organisation, this is a showcase of what design thinking can do. So either start small and get comfortable with it, because they are complex and there's lots of steps. And until you're comfortable, you can't take it apart and put it back together and play with it. And if timings go awry, you've got to be able to understand where you've got flex. Or do yourself a favour and hire a facilitator. It makes life a lot easier. And, you can work with those facilitators too. And I've done it before now where I have someone shadowing me and I explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and how actually with this flex. And it's almost like that, fourth wall kind of thing, or turn around like, right, okay, the reason why I've done this is X, Y, and Z. And they're like, okay, right, get you. And they understand that. And they understand that there's, ebbs and flows and changes, and where you've broken the process slightly and tweaked it and done what you need to do. Don't be like, I've read a book, I'm going to go to my CEO and I'm going to get like the really heads of department and really put myself out there on a pedestal and make myself vulnerable, because it is a difficult thing to do. And it does take a few trials at it.
And I would say in that situation, don't even think about running a design sprint. Run a 1 hour workshop. Change a meeting to a workshop first. Yes. Get people comfortable with doing a note and vote or a simple kind of sailboat type exercise. You can Google these. They're all available. They're out there.
Learning decision jams, things like that.
Yeah, just do one small thing, 1 hour workshop, something like that. Build it up over time. Yes. Build that muscle of confidence around facilitation. Because there's a shit ton of things that can go wrong. Knowing the order of things and how you kind of design the flow of a workshop, that's just one thing. Then you've got all of the challenges of facilitating, the technical challenges. How do you get people along on the journey with you? How do you give good instruction so everyone knows exactly what they're doing? How do you deal with the dickhead in the room that is just there to be obnoxious?
Singular?
The dickheads in the room, right? Often there are multiple. How do you deal with them? They all have, there's a reason why they're being toxic in a room. There's a reason why they're asking certain questions. You need to understand what that reason is, so that then you can guide them and help them and get something out of them so they feel like they're giving value. Sometimes it's because they want to be heard. Sometimes it's because they think this is useless. I know Agile, therefore I don't need to do these things. Sometimes it's a completely different reason about some kind of insecurity or whatever it is. So know how to deal with those things. So do something really small, practice with a group of people that are trusted, that you worked with perhaps in the past. Try and experiment and explore those different approaches. Coming back to the design sprint, the full thing. We talked a little bit about the things that you want to get right at the beginning. Make sure you're working on the right problem, that it's the right kind of scope. Make sure you know why you're going into a design sprint in the first place. Do research. I think is a very good thing to be doing. As much research as you can. Figure out exactly where you want to be playing and the problems that you want to be trying to solve. Have good facilitation. Hire a great facilitator. There's two right here.
Covering the north and the south of the country.
There we
Who
go.
knew?
We'll just separate right in the Midlands. Coventry. Let's draw a line straight across. I don't want to go north of Coventry, that's for sure. I don't want to go to Coventry. Anyone from Coventry, I'm also from Coventry, so I feel your pain. Great facilitation, plan things. Don't worry if it goes wrong. Don't worry if you have to circle back. These things happen. A design sprint is a linear recipe, which is all time framed and time boxed and all that sort of stuff. And when you're good at facilitation and when you kind of really get that repetition going and practice going, you can stick to time. But don't worry to start with. It's okay if it just goes off a little bit. But then afterwards, what do we do afterwards? How do we make sure that this design sprint just doesn't fall off a cliff and nothing happens as a result?
Yeah, every time that happens, a facilitator's little heart breaks somewhere.
I
I know,
know.
I've seen it. This is the thing. So I've done a couple of sprints recently in organizations where we've looked at process, and actually it's really difficult to test a process change, and often you're looking for really specific opportunities. So actually the next time this thing arises, or the next time that customer needs X, we're going to do this, because you are wanting to test in a, focus in your testing to try and get the results you need. So therefore you break the process of the design sprint. You kind of like separate out the prototyping, because there might be multiple things that you can't change on a pinhead, and you're looking for the opportunity where this thing comes up, or it might be there's training involved, or all sorts of things, and then you're testing and not falling into bad habits. So a case of, we're going to change this process, so we're going to do some training. Okay. And then when I've done a check-in, it's been like, okay, so how do we test the training before it happened? Oh, we didn't. We just did the training. So you didn't get one or two people who are likely to go through the training, get their feedback as to whether it's going to really land with them and it's the format they need and it's the information they need. No, we just did it. Okay. Well, did you do any feedback surveys afterwards? No. Okay. So a key thing within the process would not even apply the design principles to, which is a problem. And also the loss of momentum. So, it could be a case of we've totally redesigned something, or we've seen actually where there's faults within a process, but it's taken so long to address those things because the team come out of that room, they all splinter off into their relevant departments, and the organisation hasn't given them the bandwidth to actually do the thing. It was a case of like, we spent the money on the facilitator, we gave those people a week to do the design sprint, but now they're back in the real world and they've just got to crack on with their jobs. Well,
Yeah.
it was a waste of time and a waste of money,
Yeah.
and no one wants to see that, because it's really sad when you've got that energy and that opportunity and it just dissipates. I think another thing is when there's not explicit agreement about who's going to do what and how they're going to do it, and if they don't do it, what's the implication of that, and holding people accountable. I think choices again on what's not going to happen, because these things are going to happen. So you have everything has there's a cost. My colleague Sean talks a lot about the cost of clarity. You make decisions. If you're going to do X, then something else has to suffer, and you have to remove that from either the C team agenda or the workload of the participants. And I think lastly, it not being that the sprint team kind of walk away and go, oh, well, we found where the problem was. That's my job done. It's for someone else to fix. It needs to be you keep on with that hands-on approach. You do your testing, you work out what's worked, what hasn't, iterate it through until you get to the point where it's as close as damn it and you're happy with it and that thing goes live. And then you still keep on monitoring it and work out how it can be made better. Keep on iterating. That build, measure, learn cycle, or however you've got a different
Learn,
starting
build,
point.
measure. Learn, build,
Yeah.
measure. It should be. I mean,
Yeah, that's a good point.
so frustrating. Eric Ries has got it wrong.
Challenge him.
Oh, I have.
Ooh.
I have.
Have
He's
you?
not
Okay,
listening.
excellent.
He doesn't pick up my calls anymore.
See, I think there's a few things, and you don't want it to be a case of, the management team going, oh, bless them, they've come out of that design sprint, they think all these things are going to change. It was actually just like a nice little like well-being exercise to get everyone energized and motivated, and we've done our bit, and actually, who cares about the outcome? You may as well go outside and just burn some money.
Totally. Yeah, it's innovation theatre at that point, right?
Exactly.
And we're seeing so many things like innovation labs with the cuts. There's a lot of innovation labs and innovation accelerators and incubators, whatever, corporate ones that are just being pushed aside because actually they're not creating any value. And a design sprint is there in order to determine whether or not you can capture, create, and deliver value with this new thing that you're creating. And value could be money, but equally it could be efficiency. It could be saving money with better processes. It could be employee happiness. It could be all kinds of different things, but it's got to be capturing value, or at least indicating that there is value capture and creation and delivery happening. Otherwise, it's just theatre. It looks good. It smells good. There's loads of post-it notes. There's some pretty designs that people can use on their Dribbble page or Behance page, but actually, there's bugger all good happened, and that's a real trap and a risk that people fall into.
And if you don't really examine what's going on with your organisations, the points of failure or the feedback you're getting when people aren't happy, whether that be staff, customers, stakeholders, whatever, and address it, you're not future-proofing. It's that simple. Like if you look at the Invincible Company book, it's a case of like, where do the opportunities lie? Understanding those things, iterating it out, getting feedback and testing ideas. That's how you evolve. That's how you stay current. It's how you reduce costs, increase profitability, increase staff retention. All that amazing stuff comes from creative and innovative practices. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be time consuming. You can do, mini sprints. It doesn't have to be 5 days. It could be, I've done a sprint in 2 days.
Yeah.
It was full on. Everyone was jacked up on sugar, but we did it and it had great output. So there's lots of different ways you can do it. And I think it's getting used to that, having a more of an innovative approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually the difference between the two books of this book, Design Sprint, and the book Sprint by Jake. In fact, by the way, I'm also talking to John Zeratsky very soon, interviewing him as well.
Spencer Ayres, friend of the stars.
That's what I do. Here I am. But the big difference between these two things, and kind of AJ and Smart bundling that version into the kind of Sprint book, the Jake Knapp, John Zeratsky version, the differences between those two is that the Jake Knapp, AJ Smart version, if you like, is a specific recipe that is linear and you shouldn't really deviate from it. And it's all about kind of that whole thing together. The other version is like pick and choose. Like if that workshop and this thing and this activity, if you've only got time to do 2 hours, pick some activities and do that. Maybe you've got 2 hours a week for a few weeks. Well, do a few activities on those days and see if you can start to make headway. You're not going to be as quick. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, but I think it's well worth. It's better than nothing. It's better than nothing.
Exactly. Like you say, compound choices.
There we go. What a great place to leave this.
I know, exactly. I was going to say, I've got 3 minutes for my next meeting. A rapid fire day.
Grab yourself a cup of tea. That's what I reckon.
I haven't even had a chance to drink this bad boy. It's.
Well, I've got to go as well because I'm literally going to end up in poo all over this office very shortly. Stanley's not enjoying this call as much as I was hoping he would.
I mean, bless him. Is he not sat there writing notes? So he wants to be an innovation pop.
He's just flicking through the book at the moment. Yep, we got it.
I'm going to recommend making with Spinifex to all my dog friends.
It's just, he's spinning up a landing page. He's now, fuck, he can't be a sprint consultant. Come on. All right, you got to go.
Okay.
I've got to go before I go delirious.
Until next time, homework would be, give it a go.
Give it a go.
Have a look at the Sprint book. Have a look at some exercises. Think about where you could use it, how you could use it. There's no restriction on what you can use it on. Just don't try and design all the things in one go, please.
Exactly. How about this? Give it a go. And if you don't want to give it a go, give us a call.
There you go. We'll promise not to bring our dogs.
Promise.
Promise.
All right.
As always.
Have a lovely week.
See you later.